Fight me in a piano duel. A solo, right here. Amara's voice boomed, her eyes locked on Khloe. The crowd buzzed, and Khloe smiled, full of confidence. If you lose, leave this place immediately. The duel occurred in the grand foyer of Crestwood, the gleaming Steinway grand piano at its center. The audience gathered, eager to see the ghetto girl fall. Amara took a deep breath, bracing herself. What sparked this clash? Was the outcome clear as day? Dear listeners, where are you watching from? Share your city and guess. Will Amara win or will she lose? Hit the subscribe button and ring the bell to stay updated on our latest stories. Follow us to discover how one song changed everything, breaking barriers that no one saw coming. Can talent overcome prejudice? The answer lies in music. The city's heartbeat pulsed through the cracked pavement of the slums, where neon signs flickered and the air carried the weight of dreams too. Heavy to lift, in a cramped apartment, lit by a single bulb that buzzed like a trapped insect, Amara Hayes sat hunched over an old electric keyboard. Her slender fingers, calloused from years of toil, danced across the worn keys. At 18, Amara was a vision of resilience, her dark eyes fierce with focus, her coiled hair framing a face that held both beauty and defiance. The keyboard, a second-hand relic salvaged from a pawn shop, was her sanctuary, its tinny notes a rebellion against the chaos outside. Tonight, the room was stifling, the summer heat pressing against the walls. Amara's younger brother, Jamal, sprawled on a threadbare couch, his math homework forgotten as he watched her play. Their mother, Lena, was still at her night shift, scrubbing floors in an office tower downtown. The family's life was a tightrope walk. Every dollar Amara earned playing piano at local dives went to rent, food, or keeping the lights on. But when she played, the world fell away. Her fingers wove a spell, transforming the dingy room into a cathedral of sound. She was practicing Clair de Lune, Debussy's haunting masterpiece. Each note shimmered like moonlight on water, her touch delicate yet deliberate. Amara had taught herself this piece through YouTube videos, pausing and replaying grainy tutorials on her cracked phone screen. No teacher, no sheet music, just her, ear and an unyielding hunger to create. As the melody swelled, Jamal sat up, his usual teasing replaced by quiet awe. "You're gonna make it big one day, Mara," he whispered. She flashed him a half-smile, but her focus never wavered. Making it big was a dream she scarcely allowed herself to entertain. The clock ticked past 9. Amara grabbed her worn denim jacket and headed out, the keyboard's echo still humming in her veins. She was due at the Blue Note, a dimly lit restaurant on the edge of the slums where she played for tips and a meager hourly wage. The walk was short but treacherous, past graffiti-stained walls and groups of men who eyed her too long. She kept her head high, her stride purposeful, clutching the small knife in her pocket just in case. The city didn't scare her. It was home, raw and unforgiving. The Blue Note was a haven of sorts, its faded red curtains and scuffed wooden floors a stark contrast to the polished venues uptown. The crowd was a mix of regulars, tired workers, lonely drifters, and the occasional dreamer like Amara. She settled at the upright piano, its keys yellowed but still responsive. The manager, a gruff man named Tony, gave her a nod. "Make 'em. Feel something tonight, kid?" he said, tossing her a bottle of water. Amara didn't need the prompt. She always played with her soul bared. As she began, the chatter in the room softened. Her opening piece, a jazzy rendition of Autumn Leaves, warmed the air, drawing smiles from the waitstaff. But it was Clair de Lune that hushed the crowd, entirely. Amara closed her eyes, letting the music carry her. The notes flowed like a river, gentle at first, then surging with quiet intensity. She thought of her mother's weary smile, Jamal's hopes pinned on her, the weight of their small family survival. Each phrase was a confession, a prayer, a defiance of the world that told her she'd never rise above the slums. Unbeknownst to her, a man sat alone at a corner table, his gray suit out of place among the worn jackets and faded dresses. Professor Samuel Carter, a luminary from Crestwood Music Academy, had wandered into the Blue Note by chance, seeking a quiet meal after a lecture. His fork paused mid-air as Amara's music reached him. He leaned forward, his sharp eyes studying her. This wasn't just skill. It was artistry, raw and unpolished, the kind he'd spent decades searching for. Her phrasing, her dynamics, the way she made the old piano sing. It was as if Debussy himself whispered through her fingers. The final notes of Clair de Lune lingered, and the room erupted in applause, louder than usual. Amara opened her eyes startled and gave a shy nod. Tips clinked into the jar by the piano, more generous tonight. As she transitioned to a softer piece, Professor Carter pulled a notepad from his briefcase. He scribbled quickly, his pen moving with urgency. This girl, he thought, belonged somewhere bigger than this forgotten corner of the city. When Amara's set ended, she gathered her tips, enough for groceries and maybe a new pair of shoes for Jamal. Tony slipped her a 20, muttering, "Good job, kid." As she packed up, she noticed a folded envelope on the piano, her name written in elegant script. Her heart skipped. She glanced around, but the man in the gray suit was gone, his table empty save for a half-finished glass of wine. Back in the apartment, under the flickering bulb, Amara opened the envelope with trembling hands. Inside was a letter, its crest embossed with the seal of Crestwood Music Academy. "Dear Miss Hayes," it began, "your talent is extraordinary. I invite you to attend our open house at Crestwood. A scholarship awaits those with your gift. Come and let music carve your path. Signed, Samuel Carter, Professor of Piano Studies." Amara's breath caught. Crestwood? The name conjured images of marble halls and prodigies born with silver spoons. She clutched the letter, her mind racing. Could this be her chance? Or was it a cruel tease, a door that would slam shut once they saw who she was? Outside, the city hummed its restless song, but in that moment, Amara heard only the echo of her melody, daring her to dream. The air in the Hayes' apartment was thick with the scent of instant coffee and the faint tang of bleach from Lena's work. Clothes hung to dry on a sagging line by the window. Amara sat cross-legged on the floor, the letter from Crestwood Music Academy trembling in her hands. Its cream-colored paper, embossed with a golden crest, felt alien in the dim glow of their single bulb, like a relic from a world she'd only glimpsed in dreams. Her heart thudded, each beat a question. Was this real? Could someone like her, born in the shadow of the city's slums, step into a place like Crestwood? Lena burst through the door, her face etched with the exhaustion of her night shift. Her janitor's uniform was crumpled, but her eyes lit up when she saw Amara clutching the envelope. "What's that, baby?" she asked, kicking off her worn sneakers. Amara handed her the letter, words catching in her throat. Lena's calloused fingers traced the elegant script, and as she read, her lips parted in a silent gasp. "Crestwood," she whispered, as if saying the name too loudly might shatter the moment. "They want my girl?" Amara nodded, her voice barely audible. "A professor heard me play at the Blue Note. Says there's a scholarship for people like me." Lena sank onto the couch, the springs creaking under her weight. She read the letter again, her brow furrowing. "This Samuel Carter, he thinks you're special, Mara. Extraordinary, he says." Her voice cracked with pride, but a shadow of doubt lingered in her eyes. Crestwood was a fortress of privilege, a place for prodigies with private tutors and trust funds, not for girls who learned piano on a thrift store keyboard. The apartment fell silent, save for the distant wail of a siren outside. Amara's younger brother, Jamal, stirred from his sleep on the couch, rubbing his eyes. "What's going on?" he mumbled. Lena forced a smile, tucking the letter safely on the table. "Your sister's got a shot at something big, that's what." Jamal's sleepy grin widened. "Told you, Amara, you're a star." But Amara's stomach twisted. A star? Stars didn't live in apartments with peeling paint, didn't scrape by on tips from drunks at the Blue Note. Lena rose, her movements deliberate despite her fatigue. She brewed coffee in their chipped pot, the gurgle, filling the tense quiet. "We need to talk this through," she said, handing Amara a mug. "Crestwood ain't our world, you know that." Amara wrapped her hands around the warm ceramic, the heat grounding her. "I know, Mama, but he says they have scholarships. Full ones, maybe." She trailed off, afraid to voice the hope bubbling inside her. Lena's gaze softened, but her voice was firm. "Maybe's a dangerous word, baby. Places like that, they got their own rules, their people. You walk in there, you're gonna be a stranger." Amara stared into her coffee, the dark liquid reflecting her uncertain eyes. She'd felt like a stranger her whole life, among the rough crowds at the restaurant, the kids at school who mocked her second-hand clothes, even the neighbors who pitied her family's struggle. But music had always been her refuge, a language where she belonged. Could Crestwood be different? Determined to understand what she was up against, Amara grabbed her phone, its screen spiderwebbed from a fall months ago. She typed Crestwood Music Academy into the search bar, her fingers trembling. Images loaded, marble columns gleaming. Under chandeliers, practice rooms with glossy grand pianos, students in tailored blazers performing on stages that dwarfed the Blue Note. The website boasted of alumni at Juilliard, Carnegie Hall, and the Vienna Philharmonic. Amara's breath hitched. This wasn't just a school, it was a gateway to a world she'd never dared imagine. Lena peered over her shoulder, her expression a mix of awe and apprehension. "Lord, look at that place," she murmured. "Like a palace." Amara scrolled to the scholarship page, her heart racing. "They say they want talent, not money," she read aloud. "Full tuition, instruments, even living expenses for exceptional candidates." The word exceptional hung in the air, heavy with possibility. Lena's eyes glistened, but she pressed her lips tight, holding back tears. Jamal, now fully awake, leaned in. "You're exceptional, Mara. You play like nobody else." Amara managed a weak smile, but doubt gnawed at her. What if this was a mistake? What if Professor Carter had overestimated her, dazzled by a single performance? She'd taught herself everything. Chords, scales, theory, through free apps and late-night videos. No formal lessons, no pedigree. Would that be enough for a place like Crestwood? Lena set her mug down with a clink, her resolve hardening. "If you want this, we'll make it work. Always have, always will." She reached for Amara's hand, her grip strong despite the roughness of her skin. "But you gotta be sure, baby. This ain't just about playing piano. It's about stepping into their world, facing whatever comes." Amara squeezed her mother's hand, drawing strength from it. "I'm scared, Mama," she admitted, her voice small. "But I'm more scared of not trying." The decision settled over them like a vow. Lena pulled Amara into a fierce hug, her exhaustion forgotten. "Then we go," she said. "We show 'em what a Hayes girl can do." Amara nodded against her mother's shoulder, the letter on the table glowing like a beacon in the dim light. Crestwood was a gamble, a leap into the unknown. But as she closed her eyes, she heard the echo of Claire de Lune, its notes urging her forward. Fate had knocked, and Amara would answer, no matter what lay beyond the door. The morning sun glinted off the windshield of Lena's battered Honda, a relic that coughed and rattled as it climbed the winding road to Crestwood Music Academy. Amara sat in the passenger seat, her hands twisting the hem of her plain white t-shirt, the fabric clinging to her skin in the late summer heat. Her faded jeans hugged her legs, and her scuffed sneakers felt like a betrayal against the polished world they were about to enter. Beside her, Lena gripped the steering wheel, her one good dress, a navy shift ironed to crisp perfection, straining slightly at the seams. Neither spoke, the weight of the unknown pressing down like a storm cloud. As they crested the hill, Crestwood emerged like a vision from a fairy tale. Marble columns soared against a backdrop of manicured gardens, their roses blooming in defiant splendor. The academy's stone facade gleamed, its arched windows catching the light like eyes watching their approach. Amara's breath caught. This was no school. It was a palace, a shrine to music and privilege. far removed from the gritty streets of their slum. Lena let out a low whistle. Lord, Mara, this place looks like it costs more than our whole life put together. They parked between a sleek BMW and a polished Tesla, the Honda's dents glaringly out of place. Amara stepped out, her sneakers, crunching on the gravel drive, and felt the gaze of other visitors, parents in tailored suits, students in crisp blazers, sweep over her. She straightened, forcing her shoulders back, but the weight of their stares pressed against her chest. Lena smoothed her dress, her chin high despite the faint tremor in her hands. "We're here now," she murmured. "Let's show 'em. We belong." The open house banner fluttered above the entrance, its gold lettering proclaiming Crestwood, where excellence resonates. Amara clutched the invitation from Professor Carter, its edges worn from days of anxious handling. The paper was her shield, proof she wasn't an intruder. As they joined the stream of guests, the scent of lavender and polished wood enveloped them, a stark contrast to the diesel and dust of home. The grand foyer unfolded before them, a cathedral of opulence. A chandelier dripped crystals that fractured, light across marble floors, and the ceiling arched so high it seemed to hold its own sky. But it was the piano that stopped Amara's heart. A Steinway grand, ancient and majestic, stood on a low platform at the foyer's center, its ebony finish gleaming like liquid night. Its lid was raised, revealing strings that shimmered with promise. Carved into its side were the names of legendary pianists who had played it: Rubinstein, Horowitz, Argerich, a lineage of greatness that made Amara's pulse race. She'd never touched an instrument like this, only the worn upright at the blue note or her battered keyboard. Her fingers twitched, yearning to feel the ivory keys, to coax music from a piano worthy of her dreams. Lena nudged her gently. "You okay, baby?" Amara nodded, but her eyes never left the Steinway. "It's perfect," she whispered, her voice thick with awe. She took a step closer, drawn like a moth to flame, but the crowd's murmurs reminded her of her place. She was the oddity here, her simple clothes a stark contrast to the designer dresses and tailored jackets around her. A girl in a velvet blazer glanced at her, then whispered to her mother, who raised an eyebrow. Amara's cheeks burned, but she refused to shrink. A woman in a sleek suit approached, her smile polished but distant. "Welcome to Crestwood," she said, her eyes flicking over Amara's t-shirt and Lena's modest dress. "Are you here for the open house?" Lena answered before Amara could falter. "My daughter was invited by Professor Carter." She handed over the letter, her voice steady despite the woman's assessing gaze. The woman? Ms. Langley, per E. Her name tag scanned the invitation, her expression softening slightly. "Miss Hayes, of course. You're welcome to explore the foyer and join the tour shortly." She handed them programs, then moved on, her heels clicking with purpose. Amara clutched the program, its thick paper listing performers with names, like Vanderbilt and Sinclair, their accolades spanning international competitions. She felt like an imposter, a sparrow among peacocks. Lena squeezed her arm. "Don't let this place scare you," she said softly. "You're here because you're good, Mara. Better than good." Amara managed a nod, but her eyes drifted back to the Steinway. It called to her, not just as an instrument but as a challenge, a chance to prove she wasn't invisible. She took another step toward the piano, her heart pounding. The crowd parted slightly, their conversations a distant hum. The keys gleamed, each one a promise of sound she'd only imagined. She reached out, her fingers hovering above the ivory, not daring to touch. What would it feel like to play here, to let her music fill this gilded hall? The thought was intoxicating, but terrifying. She was a girl from the slums, untrained, unpolished. Did she dare disturb this sacred space? Before her fingers could graze the keys, a sharp voice cut through her reverie, freezing her in place. The foyer seemed to hold its breath, and Amara's world tilted, poised on the edge of something she couldn't yet name. The grand foyer of Crestwood Music Academy shimmered with an almost otherworldly glow, the chandelier's crystals casting prisms across the marble floor. Amara Hayes stood frozen, her fingers hovering a breath above the Steinway grand piano's ivory keys. The instrument, a relic of musical royalty, seemed to pulse with a life of its own, its carved names, Rubinstein, Horowitz, whispering of a legacy she longed to touch. Her heart pounded, a mix of reverence and reckless desire. At 18, she was a stranger in this gilded world, her white t-shirt and worn jeans a stark defiance against the tailored elegance around her. Yet for a fleeting moment, the piano made her feel she belonged. "Who do you think you are?" The voice sliced through the air, sharp as a blade. Amara's hand jerked back as if burned, her pulse spiking. Khloe Spencer stepped forward, her platinum blonde hair pulled into a flawless chignon, her emerald dress clinging to her like a second skin. Her blue eyes glinted with disdain, and the three students trailing her, clones in their designer attire, smirked in unison. The crowd's murmurs hushed, all eyes turning to the unfolding drama. Amara felt the weight of their stares, each one a pinprick against her skin. I was just looking," Amara stammered, her voice betraying her. She cursed herself inwardly. She'd faced worse on the streets of the slums. But this was different. This was Crestwood, where wealth and pedigree ruled, and she was an interloper in their eyes. Khloe's lips curled into a smile that was all teeth. "Looking? This isn't a museum for slum rats. That's a Steinway, worth more than your entire existence. Get your filthy hands off it." The insult landed like a slap, and the crowd's stifled gasps rippled through the foyer. Amara's cheeks burned, but she stood her ground, her fists clenching at her sides. She glanced toward her mother, Lena, who was pushing through the throng, her navy dress catching the light as worry etched her face. "I wasn't touching it," Amara said, her voice steadier now. "I play piano. I was invited here." The truth felt like armor, but Khloe's laughter shattered it. "Play piano?" Khloe mocked, her voice dripping with condescension. "What, at some dive bar? This is Crestwood, not your corner karaoke joint. People like you don't belong here." Her friends snickered, one whispering loudly enough for all to hear. "Probably learned on a toy keyboard." The crowd's amusement grew, a low hum of agreement from those who saw Amara as an anomaly, a blemish in their pristine world. Lena reached Amara's side, her hand firm on her daughter's shoulder. "That's enough," she said, her voice low but fierce. "My girl's here on invitation, same as you." Khloe's gaze flicked to Lena, taking in her modest dress with a sneer. "An invitation? Oh, how charitable. Did they lower the standards just for you?" The barb was aimed at both mother and daughter, and Amara felt it pierce deep. The foyer, once a place of awe, now felt like a coliseum with her as the prey. She thought of the slums, the nights she'd played through hunger and fear, the music that had kept her whole. She wouldn't let this girl, privileged, cruel, strip that from her. "I'm not leaving," Amara said, her voice rising, clear as a bell. The crowd stilled, surprised by her defiance. Khloe's eyes narrowed, her composure slipping for a fraction of a second. "You think you can just waltz in here, touch our piano, and act like you're one of us?" she hissed. "Go back to your gutter where you belong." The venom in her words was personal, as if Amara's presence was an affront to her very identity. Something snapped inside Amara. She stepped closer to Khloe, her fear burning away under a fire of resolve. "If you're so sure I don't belong, prove it," she said, her voice cutting through the tension. "Let's see who plays better. You and me, right here." The challenge hung in the air, bold and reckless. The crowd erupted in whispers, some shocked, others thrilled by the prospect of a spectacle. Khloe's friends exchanged glances, their smirks faltering. Lena's grip tightened, her eyes wide with concern. "Mara, you don't have to." "I want to," Amara interrupted. Her gaze locked on Khloe. The other girl laughed, but it was forced, a crack in her perfect facade. "You're serious? A duel with me?" Khloe gestured to herself, her confidence returning. "I'm the best pianist in this academy. You'd be humiliated before you hit the first note. Amara didn't flinch. Then you've got nothing to lose. Khloe's smile twisted, sensing an opportunity to crush this upstart publicly. Fine, she said, her voice loud enough for the entire foyer to hear. A solo right now on the Steinway. But here's the deal. When you lose, and you will, you leave Crestwood and never come back. The crowd gasped, the stakes now brutally clear. Amara's heart thundered, but she nodded. And if I win, you apologize. To me, to my mother, in front of everyone. The agreement was sealed, a pact forged in the heat of humiliation. Khloe turned to the crowd, her arms spread as if already claiming victory. Get ready to watch this nobody crash and burn, she declared, eliciting cheers from her supporters. Amara felt the world shrink to the Steinway, its keys a battlefield where she'd either rise or fall. Lena leaned close, her voice urgent. You sure about this, baby? Amara met her mother's eyes, finding strength in their shared resilience. I have to, Mama, for us. As the crowd parted to form an impromptu arena around the piano, Amara's mind raced. She'd never played an instrument this grand, never faced an audience this hostile, but she'd faced worse nights with no food, leers from strangers, the constant grind of survival. Music had always been her weapon, her truth. Now it would be her shield against Khloe's cruelty and Crestwood's judgment. The foyer buzzed with anticipation, every eye on the girl from the slums who dared to challenge their golden star. The grand foyer of Crestwood Music Academy crackled with anticipation, the air thick with the scent of polished wood and whispered judgments. The Steinway grand piano stood like a monolith at the center, its ebony surface gleaming under the chandelier's fractured light, a silent judge in the duel about to unfold. Amara Hayes, her white t-shirt stark against the sea of designer dresses, stood beside the piano, her heart a war drum in her chest. Across from her, Khloe Spencer radiated icy confidence, her emerald gown shimmering as she basked in the crowd's expectant murmurs. The stakes were brutal. If Amara lost, she'd leave. Crestwood forever. If she won, Khloe would apologize publicly. The crowd, a mix of smug elites and curious onlookers, leaned forward, eager for the slum girl to crumble. Amara's mother, Lena, stood at the edge of the throng, her navy dress a quiet defiance, her eyes locked on her daughter with a fierce, unspoken prayer. Amara met her gaze, drawing strength from the woman who'd scrubbed floors to keep their family afloat. She wouldn't falter now. Khloe, sensing the tension, stepped forward, her smile ablade. Let's get this over with, she said, her voice carrying the weight of assured victory. Ladies first, she added, gesturing to the piano with mock courtesy, as if Amara were a guest at her execution. Khloe settled onto the bench, her posture flawless, her manicured fingers flexing with practiced ease. The crowd hushed as she announced her piece. La Campanella by Liszt, a fiendishly difficult work demanding virtuosic precision. Amara's stomach tightened. She knew the piece's reputation, its relentless cascades of notes a test of technical mastery. Khloe's hands descended, and the piano erupted in a torrent of sound. Her fingers flew, each note a pinpoint of perfection, the trills and leaps executed with surgical accuracy. The melody danced like fire, dazzling and relentless. Her face a mask of serene control. The crowd was spellbound, their applause swelling even before the final chord rang out. Khloe rose, her curtsy elegant, her eyes flicking to Amara with a look that said, "Your turn to fail." The applause thundered and whispers rippled through the foyer. Untouchable, someone muttered. The girl's done for. Another sneered. Amara felt the weight of their doubt, a tide threatening to drown her. She glanced at Lena, whose nod was a lifeline, and then at the Steinway, its keys a canvas for her truth. She'd never played an instrument this grand, only the battered upright at the Blue Note and her thrift store keyboard. But music wasn't about the tool. It was about the soul. She stepped forward, her sneakers silent on the marble, and sat at the bench, The seat was still warm from Khloe's triumph, a reminder of the mountain she had to climb. She placed her fingers on the keys, the ivory cool and impossibly smooth. A world away from her keyboard's sticky plastic. She closed her eyes for a heartbeat, shutting out the crowd, the sneers, the stakes. In that darkness, she saw her life. Nights practicing by candlelight when the power was cut. Her mother's weary hugs after double shifts. The slum streets that tried to cage her dreams. This was her moment. Her fight. She began. The first notes flowed, soft as a sigh, each phrase a brushstroke painting her world. The nocturne unfolded like a moonlit confession, its melody tender yet aching with unspoken longing. Amara's body swayed, her soul pouring through her fingers. Every chord a piece of her story, grit, hope, defiance. Unlike Khloe's clinical brilliance, Amara's playing was alive, her dynamics shifting with the ebb and flow of emotion. She lingered on I, phrase letting it breathe, then surged forward, the music swelling with quiet fire. The crowd, braced for failure, faltered. Whispers died as faces softened, drawn into the spell. A woman in pearls clutched her necklace, eyes glistening. A student in a blazer leaned forward, mouth slightly open. Even the servers, trays forgotten, stood transfixed at the foyer's edge. Amara's music wasn't just sound. It was a bridge reaching across the divide of class and color. Her fingers, unpolished but sure, found every nuance, the Steinway responding with a clarity she'd never known. It was as if the piano had waited for her, its voice amplifying her heart. Khloe's smirk faded, her arms uncrossing as Amara neared the nocturne's climax. The final phrases were a delicate ascent, each note hanging like a star before fading into silence. Amara's hands stilled, her breath shallow, as the last echo dissolved. For a moment, the foyer was a vacuum, the crowd suspended in the afterglow. Then, like a dam breaking, applause exploded, louder and wilder than Khloe's, fueled by something deeper than admiration, recognition of a truth laid bare. Amara rose, her legs trembling, her eyes finding Lena's. Her mother's tears mirrored, her own pride and relief mingling in the space between them. The crowd's ovation grew, some standing, others nodding in quiet respect. Khloe stood rigid, her face a storm of disbelief and resentment, her victory stolen by a girl she'd dismissed as nothing. Amara didn't gloat. She didn't need to. The music had spoken, and the foyer, once a battleground, now felt like a stage where she'd claimed her place. The grand foyer of Crestwood Music Academy held its breath, the last echo of Amara Hayes' nocturne fading into a silence so profound it seemed to swallow time itself. The Steinway grand piano, its ebony curves aglow under the chandelier's prismed light, stood as a silent witness to the duel that had just unfolded. Amara sat at the bench, her hands still resting on the ivory keys, her chest rising and falling with the weight of what she'd done. At 18, in her simple white t-shirt and jeans, she was a stark silhouette against the opulence around her. Yet her music had transformed her into something undeniable. A force. Across the foyer, Khloe Spencer stood rigid, her emerald gown, no longer a mantle of triumph but a shroud of stunned disbelief. The crowd, moments ago primed for Amara's failure, now teetered on the edge of revelation. The silence broke. A single pair of hands, Lena's, Amara's mother, began to clap, the sound sharp and defiant in the hushed hall. It was a spark, igniting a wildfire. Applause erupted, a tidal wave of sound that shook the marble walls. Parents in tailored suits, students in velvet blazers, even the servers with their silver trays joined in, their faces alight with awe and something deeper, respect. A woman in a pearl necklace wiped a tear, her earlier skepticism forgotten. A boy in a bow tie clapped so hard his glasses slipped. Amara's music, raw and soul-bearing, had pierced their armor, forcing them to see the girl from the slums not as an outsider, but as an artist. Amara rose from the bench, her legs unsteady, her eyes seeking Lena's. Her mother stood at the crowd's edge, her navy dress catching the light, tears streaming. down her face as she clapped with a pride that could have lit the city. Amara's own eyes stung, but she blinked back the tears, refusing to let the moment blur. She'd done it, not just played, but poured her life into the Steinway, letting every note tell of her struggles, her dreams, her unbreakable spirit. The crowd's ovation grew louder, some standing, others murmuring her name like a discovery. Amara Hayes. Khloe's face was a storm. Her perfect posture cracked, her arms falling limp as the applause for Amara drowned out the memory of her own performance. Her La Campanella, a technical marvel, had dazzled but left hearts untouched. Amara's Nocturne, simpler yet infinitely deeper, had woven a spell that Khloe's precision could never match. Her blue eyes darted to her friends, expecting their usual sycophantic support, but they avoided her gaze, their claps hesitant, drawn to Amara's undeniable brilliance. Khloe's lips trembled, a flicker of vulnerability betraying her before her mask snapped back into place. The crowd parted as a figure emerged, his gray suit understated yet commanding. Professor Samuel Carter, the man whose letter had brought Amara here, stepped into the light, his sharp eyes glinting with something akin to triumph. He clapped slowly, deliberately, each sound a verdict. "Miss Hayes," he said, his voice cutting through the fading applause, "you have not only played, you have spoken. Your music is a rare gift, one that belongs in these halls." The words landed like a gavel, affirming Amara's place in a world that had tried to reject her. Amara's breath caught, her heart swelling with a hope she'd barely dared to nurture. She glanced at Lena, whose tears had given way to a radiant smile, and felt a warmth that steadied her. Carter turned to the crowd, his presence silencing their murmurs. Crestwood was built for talent like this, talent that transcends circumstance, that speaks truth. Miss Hayes has proven that today. His gaze flicked to Khloe, a subtle challenge in its depths. "Miss Spencer, do you have anything to say?" Khloe's face flushed, her jaw tightening as every eye turned to her. The terms of the duel were clear. Amara's victory demanded an apology, public and unequivocal. For a moment it seemed she might refuse, her pride a fortress too strong to breach. The crowd held its breath, the tension a living thing. Then with a visible effort, Khloe stepped forward, her heels clicking like a countdown. "I was wrong," she said, her voice low, each word dragged from her like a confession. "I underestimated you, Amara, and your mother. I'm sorry." Apology was brittle, laced with resentment, but it was enough. The crowd murmured, some nodding in approval, others whispering in surprise. Amara met Khloe's eyes, seeing not just defeat but a flicker of something else. Fear, perhaps, of a world where her privilege wasn't enough. Amara nodded, her expression calm but unyielding. "Thank you," she said simply, her voice carrying a quiet strength that made Khloe flinch. Carter raised a hand, reclaiming the room's attention. "This duel was more than a contest," he said. "It was a reminder that music judges not by wealth or status, but by heart. Miss Hayes, your performance has earned you our consideration for Crestwood's scholarship program. We will discuss this further." The promise hung in the air, a beacon of possibility. Amara's heart raced, but she kept her face composed, aware of the eyes still watching, judging. Lena pushed through the crowd, wrapping Amara in a fierce hug. "You did it, baby," she whispered, her voice thick with emotion. "You showed 'em all." Amara clung to her, the reality of her victory sinking in. She'd faced Crestwood's elite and won, not with flash but with truth. The Steinway, once a distant dream, had become her ally, its keys a canvas for her soul. Khloe turned away, her shoulders stiff, her friends trailing her like shadows. The crowd began to disperse, their whispers now tinged with admiration for the girl who'd defied their expectations. Amara stood by the piano, her fingers brushing its edge one last time, a silent vow to return. The foyer, once a battleground, now felt like a threshold, a place where she'd claimed her right to dream, where her music had rewritten the rules of who could belong. The grand foyer of Crestwood Music Academy buzzed with a new energy, the air still vibrating from the duel that had shaken its marble walls. The Steinway grand piano, its ebony finish a mirror to the chandelier's fractured light, stood silent now, a monument to the battle Amara Hayes had won. At 18, in her plain white t-shirt and jeans, she stood beside her mother, Lena, her heart a kaleidoscope of relief and disbelief. The crowd's applause had faded, but its echo lingered in their eyes. Once skeptical, now softened with a grudging reverence. Amara had not just played. She had bared her soul, and Crestwood, for all its elitism, had listened. Lena's arms were still wrapped around her daughter, her navy dress damp with tears of pride. "You showed 'em, baby," she whispered, her voice a lifeline in the woe. Sea of unfamiliar faces. Amara clung to her, the warmth of her mother's embrace grounding her against the surreal weight of victory. She'd faced Khloe Spencer's venom, the crowd's prejudice, and her fears, and emerged not just unscathed but transformed. Yet, as the crowd dispersed, whispering her name like a newfound legend, Amara felt a tremor of uncertainty. What came next in a place that had tried to reject her? Professor Samuel Carter, his gray suit a quiet contrast to the foyer's opulence, approached with a measured stride. His sharp eyes, which had first spotted Amara's gift at the Blue Note, now held a warmth that eased her nerves. "Miss Hayes," he said, his voice carrying the authority of someone who'd shaped countless careers, "your performance was a revelation. Crestwood has seen many talents, but few with your heart." He paused, letting the words settle. "You've earned more than applause today. You've earned a future here." Amara's breath hitched, her mind racing to grasp his meaning. Lena's grip tightened, her eyes wide with hope. Carter turned to the lingering crowd, his presence commanding their attention. "This academy was founded to nurture excellence, regardless of origin," he said, his tone a gentle rebuke to those who doubted Amara. "Miss Hayes embodies that mission. I propose she be considered for our full scholarship program. Tuition, instruments, and living expenses." A murmur rippled through the room, some nods of agreement, others hesitant, still grappling with the upending of their world. A woman in a tailored blazer, introduced as Dr. Evelyn Hart, Crestwood's dean, stepped forward. Her silver hair was pulled into a severe bun, but her expression was thoughtful, not unkind. "Professor Carter speaks highly of you, Miss Hayes," she said, her voice crisp yet curious. "Your nocturne was extraordinary. Raw, yes, but with a depth we rarely see." She glanced at the Steinway, as if it had vouched for Amara's worth. "We'll need to review your application formally, but I see no reason to doubt your potential." Amara nodded, her throat tight with gratitude and fear. A scholarship? The word felt like a dream too fragile to touch. She thought of her keyboards, sticky keys, the nights she'd played through hunger, the slum streets that had shaped her. Could this palace of music truly become her home? Lena squeezed her hand, sensing her doubt. "You deserve this, Mara," she murmured. "Don't you dare think otherwise." The dean's assistant, Ms. Langley, approached with a clipboard, her earlier aloofness replaced by a cautious respect. "We'll need some information," she said, handing Amara a form. "Background, experience, references." Amara took the pen, her hand trembling slightly. Experience? She had none, save for gigs at the Blue Note and YouTube tutorials. References? Only her mother and perhaps Tony, the gruff manager who'd slipped her extra tips. But as she wrote, her resolve hardened. Her lack of pedigree didn't diminish her music. It defined it. The crowd began to thin, some parents offering tentative smiles, others still whispering about the girl from nowhere. A few students lingered, their curiosity outweighing their initial disdain. One, a boy with wire-rimmed glasses, approached shyly. "That was amazing," he said, his voice barely above a whisper. "I've never heard Chopin like that." Amara managed to smile, surprised by the warmth in his words. "Thanks," she said, her voice soft but steady. The boy nodded and retreated, a small crack in Crestwood's wall of exclusivity. Lena, ever vigilant, scanned the room for Khloe. But the girl in the emerald gown was gone, her absence a silent acknowledgement of defeat. Amara felt no triumph in this, only a quiet resolve to move forward. She'd won the duel, but the real challenge was proving she could belong here, not just for a day, but for years. The Steinway loomed behind her, its keys a reminder of the power she'd unleashed. She longed to play it again, to let its voice carry her fears away, but now was not the time. Carter placed a hand on her shoulder, his touch paternal yet firm. "You've taken the first step, Amara," he said. "The road ahead won't be easy, but you've shown you're stronger than their doubts." He handed her a card with his office number. "Come see me tomorrow. We'll start planning your path." Amara took the card, its weight a promise and a challenge. She nodded, her eyes meeting his with a determination that mirrored his own. As she and Lena prepared to leave, the foyer felt different, not a battlefield, but a space where she'd carved out a foothold. The marble gleamed a little brighter, the chandelier's light a little warmer. Amara glanced back at the Steinway one last time, its silent presence a vow that she'd return. She'd touched souls today, not just with her music, but with her courage. And in that moment, she knew. Whatever Crestwood demanded, she would answer, with the sound that was hers alone. The late afternoon sun filtered through the tall windows of Crestwood Music Academy, casting golden streaks across the oak-paneled office where Amara Hayes sat, her hands clasped tightly in her lap. The room smelled of old books and lemon polish, a world away from the slums' grit and diesel. Her white t-shirt and jeans felt like a rebellion against the office's formality, but Amara held her chin high, her dark eyes steady despite the nervous flutter in her chest. Across the desk, Professor Samuel Carter leaned forward, his gray suit impeccable, his expression one of quiet pride. Beside him sat Dr. Evelyn Hart, the dean, her silver hair glinting as she reviewed a file with Amara's name on it. The weight of their scrutiny was palpable, but Amara was no stranger to being judged. Lena sat beside her, her navy dress freshly pressed, her calloused hands folded with a dignity that silenced any doubt about her place here. The past 24 hours had been a whirlwind. Amara's duel with Khloe Spencer had left Crestwood reeling, her nocturne a seismic shift in the Academy's rigid hierarchy. Now, she faced the moment that could redefine her future. Carter cleared his throat, his voice warm yet deliberate. "Miss Hayes, your performance yesterday was a testament to your talent. We've reviewed your background, unconventional certainly, but that only underscores your extraordinary potential." Dr. Hart looked up, her gaze piercing but not unkind. "Your lack of formal training is unusual," she said, her tone measured. "Yet your command of Chopin, your emotional depth, it's rare. Crestwood values artistry above pedigree, and you've proven that." She slid a document across the desk, its crest embossed in gold. "We're offering you a full scholarship, tuition, instruments, housing, and a stipend. Effective immediately if you accept." Amara's heart stopped, then surged, a tide of disbelief and joy. A scholarship, not just a chance, but a lifeline, a way out of the slums, a path to a life where music wasn't a luxury, but her purpose. Lena's hand found hers, squeezing so tightly it anchored Amara to the moment. "Oh, baby," Lena whispered, her voice thick with tears. Amara stared at the document, its words blurring as her eyes stung. She thought of her keyboard's broken keys, the nights she'd played through hunger, her mother's double shifts. This was for them, for every sacrifice. "I accept," Amara said, her voice clear despite the lump in her throat. Carter's smile widened and Hart nodded, a flicker of approval softening her stern features. "Then welcome to Crestwood," Hart said, extending a hand. Amara shook it, her grip firm, her calluses a silent story of her journey. Lena's pride radiated, her smile brighter than the sun outside. But as they signed the paperwork, Amara felt a new weight, not of doubt, but of responsibility. She wasn't just here for herself. She carried her family, her roots, every kid in the slums who dreamed beyond their reach. As they left the office, the hallway's marble floors echoed with their steps. Students passed, some offering curious glances, others whispering her name. Amara's victory had spread like wildfire, reshaping her from an outsider to a phenomenon. But one face stopped her cold. Khloe Spencer stood by a bulletin board, her emerald dress traded for a cream sweater and skirt, her blonde hair loose, but her posture stiff. Her blue eyes met Amara's, and the air crackled with unspoken tension. Lena tensed, ready to intervene, but Amara touched her arm, a silent request to let her handle this. She approached Khloe, her heart pounding but her resolve unshaken. The memory of Khloe's apology, grudging, forced, hung between them, but Amara saw something new in her rival's gaze, not just resentment, but a flicker of uncertainty. "Khloe," Amara said, her voice calm, "I didn't come here to take anything from you. I just wanted to play." Khloe's lips parted, then closed, her hands fidgeting with a notebook. The hallway's bustle faded, leaving them in a fragile bubble. You were good," Khloe said finally, her voice low, each word a struggle. "Better than I expected. I wasn't ready for that." It wasn't warmth, but it was honesty, a crack in the armor of her privilege. Amara nodded, sensing the effort behind the words. "You're good too," she said. "But music's not about being better. It's about feeling something real." Khloe's eyes flickered, a storm of pride and vulnerability. "Maybe," she muttered, then turned away, her steps quick as if fleeing her admission. Amara watched her go, a strange peace settling over her. She didn't need Khloe's friendship, but she'd planted a seed, a chance for understanding, however small. Lena joined her, her expression wary but proud. "You're bigger than her, Mara," she said. "Always have been." They stepped into the fading light outside, the academy's spires looming like a promise. Amara clutched the scholarship papers, their weight a new kind of anchor. She'd won more than a duel. She'd won a place, a voice. Crestwood was no longer a fortress to conquer, but a stage to claim. As she and Lena walked to their battered Honda, Amara felt the music still thrumming in her veins, a melody of hope that would carry her forward, no matter what lay ahead. The auditorium of Crestwood Music Academy glowed under a canopy of soft lights, its velvet curtains framing a stage where the Steinway grand piano stood like a crown jewel. 6 months had passed since Amara Hayes' arrival, and tonight the EI Spring Recital was a celebration of talent, ambition, and transformation. The audience, parents in silk and suits, students in polished uniforms, hummed with anticipation, their programs listing Amara's name alongside Khloe Spencer's for the final performance. Amara, now 19, stood backstage, her black dress simple but elegant, a gift from Lena's savings. Her coiled hair was swept into a graceful updo, and her dark eyes shimmered with nervous excitement. Beside her, Khloe adjusted her ivory gown, her blonde hair cascading in waves, her face a mask of focus tinged with something new: respect. The journey to this moment had been fraught. Amara's scholarship had thrust her into Crestwood's demanding world, where she'd spent months honing her craft under Professor Carter's guidance, her raw talent polished without losing its fire. Khloe, once her adversary, had been assigned as her duet partner for Fantasia in F minor by Schubert, a four-hand piece requiring seamless unity. Their early rehearsals were tense, Khloe's precision clashing with Amara's expressiveness, their past duel a silent specter. But music, as Amara had learned, could build bridges where words failed. Slowly, through shared notes and stolen glances, they'd found a rhythm, each learning from the other's strengths. Now, as the recital's earlier performances, violin solos, choral pieces, drew applause, Amara felt the weight of the moment. This wasn't just a performance, it was a statement. She glanced at Lena in the front row, her mother's new dress of vibrant blue, her smile radiant with pride. Jamal sat beside her, his tie slightly crooked, his eyes wide with awe. The slums felt a world away, yet Amara carried them in her heart. Every note she played was a tribute to her roots. The stage manager signaled, and Amara and Khloe stepped into the spotlight, the Steinway gleaming between them. The audience hushed, sensing the history in their pairing. Amara settled on the left, her fingers brushing the keys she'd once feared to touch. Khloe took the right, her posture poised but less rigid than before. They exchanged a glance, not of rivalry, but of mutual understanding, a silent vow to let the music speak. Amara's pulse raced, but her hands were steady, ready to weave their story. The fantasia began, its opening chords somber yet rich, like a conversation between old friends. Amara's touch was soulful, her phrases breathing with the weight of her journey. Hunger, hope, defiance. Khloe's notes were crystalline, her technique a perfect scaffold for Amara's emotion. Together they wove a tapestry of sound. Amara's warmth softening Khloe's edges, Khloe's clarity grounding Amara's fire. The music swelled, its themes dancing and intertwining, a dialogue that transcended their differences. The audience leaned forward, caught in the spell, their breaths syncing with the rhythm. Halfway through, the piece shifted to a lively allegro, and Amara felt Khloe match her tempo, their hands moving in sync, fingers nearly brushing. It was a moment of alchemy. Class, color, and past grievances dissolved in the harmony. Amara thought of their first rehearsal, Khloe's curt corrections, and her stubborn pride. Now they were partners, their music a bridge across the chasm that had once divided them. The final chords rose, triumphant yet tender, and as they struck the last note, the auditorium erupted. The applause was thunderous, the audience on their feet, clapping with a fervor that shook the rafters. Lena's tears glistened, Jamal whooped, and even Professor Carter stood, his nod a seal of approval. Amara and Khloe rose, their hands clasped briefly, a gesture unplanned but natural. Khloe's eyes met Amara's, and for the first time, a genuine smile flickered, small but real. "We did it," Khloe whispered, her voice almost lost in the ovation. Amara nodded, her smile wide. "Yeah, we did." As they bowed, the lights caught their faces, one dark, one fair, two women who'd turned rivalry into unity. The recital ended, but the story didn't. Word of their duet spread, a beacon of hope beyond Crestwood's walls. In the slums, children gathered at the community center's old piano, inspired by Amara's rise. Parents whispered of possibilities, of dreams no longer out of reach. Amara's music, once a solitary refuge, now echoed in young hands. Each note a step toward a brighter future. Backstage, Lena enveloped Amara in a hug, her pride a tangible warmth. "You're changing things, baby," she said. Khloe lingered nearby, her usual entourage absent, and Amara approached her. "Thank you," Amara said, meaning it. Khloe hesitated, then nodded. "You made me better," she admitted, a confession that sealed their truce. The bridge they'd built wasn't just for them. It was for Crestwood, for the slums, for a world that needed harmony more than discord. And so, Amara and Khloe's duet became a melody of hope, proving that music can bridge even the deepest divides. What did their story stir in you? Did Amara's courage or Khloe's change of heart resonate most? Share your thoughts in the comments. We'd love to hear how this tale touched your soul. To every listener, from every corner of the world, thank you for joining us on this journey. Your support fuels these stories, and we're grateful for every moment you spend with us. Don't forget to subscribe and hit the bell for more tales that inspire and uplift. Until we meet again, keep listening, keep dreaming, and let music be your bridge. See you soon.